One question that most Christians have and was given an answer but still remain confused. They are rightly confused because the answer that was given to them does not make any sense. The question is, when did Jesus died? When was he crucified, and what day? Now, since this is a Passover season, I decided to just share a little on this question that so many Christians have, but they keep getting different answers. We are told it was Friday evening and that he rose on Sunday morning. Now, if you should ask a baby that is just learning to count, can you get 3 days and 3 nights from Friday evening until Sunday morning? Guess what answer you'll get? No. And they would be correct. Quoting from the famed mathematician and biblical scholar John Lennox, nonsense remains nonsense even when taught by world-famous scientists. Well, I can say the same thing about world-famous ministers who hold to such teaching that Jesus died on Friday and rose on Sunday morning. It is not possible for that to be the case, and Jesus remained true to his word. And we all know that. It's not what the interpreters of the Bible say that makes it right. It's what the interpreter, the Holy Spirit, said. Friday's crucifixion, truth or just tradition? Let's see what the Bible have to say. Jesus was asked for a sign, and he said, "No sign will be given unto you except the sign of Jonas." Matthew 12:38-40. Then certain of the scribes and the Pharisees answered, saying, "Master, we would see a sign from thee." But he answered and said unto them, "An evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall be no sign given it, but the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." This should be as easy as 1, 2, 3. And yet for so long, intelligent men and women who knows how to count to 10 get this wrong. We are told that the Jews count partial days as a full day. Well, I will give you all the partial days that your hearts desire, and you still cannot get 3 days and 3 nights from Friday evening until Sunday morning. The Hebrew word for day is yom, Y-O-M. It has more than one meaning. It can mean a long period of time, example, the day of the Lord. It can also mean, for example, what we've seen in Genesis chapter 1 over and over again, from sundown one evening to sundown of the following evening. Vayi Erev, Vayi Bokir, Yom Echad. There was evening and there was morning, day 1. Vayi Erev, Vayi Bokir, Yom Sheni. There was evening, there was morning, day 2. Vayi Erev, Vayi Bokir, Yom Shlishi. And there were evening, there were morning, the 3rd day. Vayi Erev, Vayi Bokir, Yom Revi'i. And there was evening, there was morning, the fourth day. Vayerev, Vayevokir, Yom Hamishi. There was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. Vayerev, Vayevokir, Yom Shishi. There was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. Then we have Shabbat, the seventh day, and God rested on the seventh day. So that is a period of a day as we were introduced to in Genesis chapter 1. The day begins at sundown one evening and ends at sunset the following evening. For example, today the weekly Shabbat starts on Friday evening at sundown and ends on Saturday evening at sundown. That's one day. Yom also means the lighted portion of that day, as seen in Genesis 1 verse 5. It said, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first days. So when you separate the darkness from the light is called day and the dark part is called night. So day has more than one meaning. So in context, we'll have to read and find out what is the right context of what the Bible states in any area that we need understanding. When the Bible links day and night together as Jesus did, 3 days and 3 nights, you cannot use partial days because it's speaking of a continuum, meaning it's one extended period of time. Since Jesus is the one that said how long he would remain in the tomb, let's hear how he defines a day. John 11, 7 through 10. Then after that said he to his disciples, let us go into Judea again. His disciples said unto him, Master, the Jews of late sought to stone thee, and goest thou thither again? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of the world. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbleth, because there is no light in him. So here Jesus is defining what a day, which is a lighted portion of that day, is. Now, since Jesus is the one that said he would be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth, and now we see Jesus defining what a day is, a lighted part of that day, what it is, how many hours. Since he defines what it is, which is 12 hours, you can throw away that whole idea of partial days. Since Jesus said there are 12 hours in a day, there's something else that we can safely conclude that he would believe. Namely, that there are 4 watches in a night. Each watch being 3 hours, 6 p.m. to 9, we have the first watch. 9 p.m. to 12 a.m., the second watch. 12 a.m. to 3 a.m., the third watch. And 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., the fourth watch. So this is a combined 12 hours in a night. Now we can add Jesus' 3 days and 3 nights. Each day is 12 hours and each night is 12 hours. 12 times 3 equals 36 hours in 3 days. 12 times 3 equals 36 hours in 3 nights. 36 plus 36 equals 72. And that's 72 hours in 3 days and 3 nights. Now forgive me if I seem to be insulting your mathematical capability, but remember why we are here. Some people are having problem with 1, 2, 3. If Jesus died at the 9th hour, 3 p.m. on Friday, how can you possibly get 3 days and 3 nights to Sunday morning? It's laughable, really. We have Friday night, 1 night. Saturday day, 1 day. Saturday night, 2 nights. Sunday morning, the women came to the tomb. Hear what the Bible said when they came to the tomb. This is Matthew's account. Matthew 28, verse 1. In the end of the Sabbath, as it beginning to dawn, towards the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. Beginning to dawn is not dawn. That is something in the process of happening. Hear what Luke's account said. Luke 24, 1 and 2. Now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they came unto the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared, and certain other with them. And they found the stone rolled away from the sepulchre. How early, Luke did not say exactly, but he said it was very early in the morning. This is John's account, John 20, verse 1. The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone take it away from the sepulchre. So John gives us the most specific time. It was what? Still dark when to the sepulchre. Now, who was the first one to get to the empty tomb after the woman? It was John, this same John. He outran Peter to get to the tomb when he heard that Jesus was risen. This is the same John that is telling us that it was dark when the woman came to the tomb. Why is that important? If the woman came to the tomb when it was still dark, or even using Matthew's account, it was starting to dawn, we cannot use any part of Sunday day in our count as a day. Remember what the most supportive of the three account to that theory Matthew said. Jesus was already risen. They did not see him in the tomb. He had already risen before they got there. Even in this account, in Matthew's account, we cannot count Sunday as a partial day for that very reason. So let's ask the question, when did Jesus die? He died on a day that preceded a High Sabbath day, not the weekly Sabbath. John 19:30-31. When Jesus therefore received the vinegar, he said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. The Jews therefore, because it was a preparation that the bodies should not remain on the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath was a high day, besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away. What is a high Sabbath day? A high Sabbath day is technically an annual holy day or annual Sabbath as commanded in Leviticus 23. The annual Sabbaths, plural, take precedence over the weekly Sabbaths, and they can fall on any day of the week. The annual Sabbaths are 7. The first and 7th day of unleavened bread, Pentecost, Feast of Trumpet, Rosh Hashanah, which is Rosh Hashanah in Hebrew, Then we have Atonement or Yom Kippur. The first day of Tabernacles, Sukkot, and the last great day. The first three occur in spring. The first of these three high Sabbaths, they occur in the springtime, and the last four happen in the fall. Thus, the high day of which John was speaking was one of the three spring holy days, annual holy days. And since Jesus' crucifixion took place on the day of Passover, Nisan 14 on the Hebrew calendar, the high holy day which he speaks must be the first day of unleavened bread, which fall the day after Passover, Nisan 15. The Friday account is readily accepted because they rush to a conclusion at the word Sabbath. Here is some undeniable facts. The women followed to see where Jesus' body was buried. Why? Because they were planning to buy spices to come later to anoint the body of Jesus. Luke 23:54-55 we read, "And that day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew nigh. And the woman also which came with him from Galilee followed after and beheld the sepulchre and how his body was laid. When they laid Jesus in the tomb, the high Sabbath, the first day of unleavened bread, the 15th of Nisan, was upon them." Again in Leviticus 23, that's a day that is a high holy day. It can fall on any day of the week. But that day was upon them. No work was permitted on that day. So we know the woman did not went back home and prepare spices that night, because that was the Sabbath, the first day of unleavened bread. So when were the spices bought and prepared? Hear what Mark 16 verse 1 said. "And when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene, or Mary of Magdala, and Mary the mother of James and Salome had bought spices that they might come and anoint him." The spices were bought after the Sabbath. Think about what we are reading. Bible in basic English. "And when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Salome got spices, so that they might come and put on him." It is very important that I read those, because I want you to understand when these women bought these spices, because this is key to understanding when Jesus Christ died. So I went through that for that purpose, to give you that clarity in when they did what they did in purchasing the spice. After the weekly Sabbath would be sundown and Saturday evening, most places or businesses in Jerusalem would have been closed. It is said that the preparation of a spices could take up to a day. It's not something you just do in a few minutes. So even if you could believe that they bought the spices Saturday night and spent all night preparing it, here is the problem. Luke 23:55-56. "And the woman also which came with him from Galilee followed after and beheld the sepulchre and how his body was laid." We read that verse before, but hear what the next verse said. "And they returned and prepared spices and ointment." The key that you cannot miss is here. "And rested the Sabbath day according to the commandment." Since we know they bought the spices after the Sabbath, how could they prepare the spices and then rested on the Sabbath? I thought the Sabbath had just passed. If they bought the spices after the Sabbath and prepare the spices, how could they have rested on the Sabbath? Luke 23 verse 56 is the last verse of that chapter. We move now to chapter 24 verse 1. After they prepared the spices and rested on the Sabbath, Luke 24 1 and 2 said, and now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they came to the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared. And certain others were with them, and they found the stone rolled away from the sepulchre. They saw where Jesus was buried. They went back home and observed the Sabbath. After the Sabbath, they went out to purchase spices. Then they prepared it. After they prepared the spices, they rested on the Sabbath. Are you getting the point that there's something wrong with this Friday story? The point is there were 2 Sabbaths that week when Jesus died. Let me repeat that. There were 2 Sabbaths that week when Jesus died. You remember how we started out? That it was, John told us, John 19:31 tells us, that Sabbath that they were rushing to get the body of Jesus in the tomb for was a what? A high Sabbath, not the weekly Sabbath. The only day on which Jesus could have died following the biblical chronology is on Wednesday. I'm going to repeat that. The only day on which Jesus could have died following the biblical chronology is on Wednesday. No other day. Wednesday was the Passover. Jesus ate the Passover meal with his disciples on Tuesday after sundown, which is the beginning of Passover. He was crucified on Wednesday evening. That Wednesday was the preparation day. It was Passover day, which was a preparation day for the High Sabbath, which was the first day of unleavened bread, which would be Thursday, the 15th of Nisan. Jesus, being the Passover Lamb of God, died at the time of the evening sacrifice, the 9th hour or 3 p.m. That gave little time to the rulers to get his body in the tomb before Sabbath start at sundown Wednesday evening. Think about how they had to rush to get Jesus in the tomb before the Sabbath began. Jesus died at 3 p.m. You don't have much time between 3 and sundown. They went to break his feet to speed up his death, but they found out that he was already dead, so they did not have to do that in fulfillment of Scripture. For example, Psalm 34 that say that he keepeth all his bones, not one of them is broken. They took him down from the cross. Joseph of Arimathea went and asked for permission to get the body of Jesus to bury him before the Sabbath begins. He wrapped him and buried him in a new tomb. All this happened between 3 p.m. and sundown. I believe they only had maybe minutes to spare before the Sabbath began. That's just my personal belief, not a doctrinal teaching. But when you consider that 3 p.m. he was crucified, and they had to make sure he was dead. They went away, obviously, and they came back to see that he was dead, so to break his legs, and they found out he was dead. All of that is taking time. Then Joseph of Arimathea had to walk wherever he had to walk or far he had to go to ask for permission to get the body. Then he got to go back to the cross to take Jesus' body down and to wrap him in linen cloth and put his body. All of this is taking many not hours, but a long period of time, let's put it that way, and therefore had to be close to sundown when they put his body in the tomb. So these women saw and they went back home. They had no time to go buy spice to prepare that evening, which we know they purchased after the Sabbath. So if we follow the Friday story, they'd have to purchase these spices on Sunday in the daytime, because that's after the Sabbath. The Sabbath finished at sundown Saturday, but as I said, most places would have been closed in Jerusalem. So after the Sabbath, following the Friday story, would be Sunday daytime that they would purchase the spices. But they said after they prepared the spices, they rested on the Sabbath. So I guess that Sabbath would be a Monday, and then the first day of the week would have to be Tuesday. It does not make any sense. Jesus was placed in the tomb Wednesday at sundown. Let's count. Wednesday night, 1 night. Thursday, 1 day. Thursday night, 2 nights. Friday, 2 days. Friday night, 3 nights. Saturday, 3 days. Since Jesus said 3 days and 3 nights he would be in the earth, and since he defined what a day is by saying 12 hours is in a day, Jesus could not spend Saturday night in the tomb. He would have been risen on Saturday at twilight, Saturday evening at twilight. That is why when the woman came to the tomb, Jesus was already, he was not rising out of the tomb. He was already gone. They did not see him in the tomb. Jesus had risen sometime earlier. So you cannot place the resurrection on Sunday morning, because if Jesus had stayed in the tomb Saturday night, it would mean simply that he was there 3 days and 4 nights. He said he would be there 3 days and 3 nights. The only day, therefore, that Jesus could have been crucified and the biblical chronology remain consistently true is on a Wednesday.